Hello and welcome to The Hard Questions. I'm Solomon Serwanjja. On this episode, I host opposition strongman and one of the founders of the Forum for Democratic Change Party, Dr. Kizza Besigye. Dr. Kizza Besigye, thank you so much for accepting to speak with us today.
A great pleasure, Solomon, and I hope to have a good discussion with you.
Great, Doc. Thank you. Back in 2005, there were a conversation of starting a multi-party dispensation system of governance. And you're one of the people who really pushed hard for it. We had a referendum and boom, we started the multi-party dispensation and politics. Different parties were born, including the Forum for Democratic Change Party, which you led for quite a while. Do you still believe that multi-party politics is a panacea for taking Uganda forward in our democratic space, to grow our democracy
You
in this
can
country?
rest assured that even when we said we have changed to a multi-party dispensation, a multi-party dispensation did not unfold. Yes, in words, we have a multi-party system in Uganda. In practice, it is even wrong to call it a one-party state. It is simply a military junta that holds the country at a stranglehold. And even in practice, by the way, in spite of having in 1995 promulgated the Constitution, in 2005 had a referendum, ostensibly had even a court ruling to dictate that there should be a multi-party dispensation. The LC system on which the country was based, LC 1, did not have an election, were never reconstituted until about 20 years later. So even under the multi-party system, the basis of government, the grassroots structures, remained those of NRM. We still have, up to today, the military in our parliament, the military which is supposed to be an important state, non-partisan state institution today, and for all the time since the last constitution was made, we have the military in parliament. Since 2005, the military is seated on the side of NRM.
No, but they said they are listening posts, Doc.
Whether they are listening posts or whatever they are, and of course we all know that they are not listening posts, they have made statements which you, the media, have recorded, underscoring their partisanship. Even as we talk, as we have this exchange, you know that one of the 4-star generals serving officer is all over the country campaigning, making very, very partisan political statements. And indeed, saying that he will be the next president as a serving officer of the military. So what we are talking about here is not opposition government side. It is simply a straightforward case of a military junta that has some camouflages to mimic how democratic systems.
So, Dr. Kizza Besigye, from what you're saying, it feels like you've given up on multipartism. I mean, you wrote a dossier really advocating for it. You were all out for it. From what you're saying, it feels like you have given up.
No, far from that. What I'm simply saying is that we haven't achieved it, and that's why we wake up every day to fight for it. We don't achieve it by words. We don't achieve it by simply writing that from tomorrow there will be a multi-party system. So the reason it hasn't been achieved is because the people have never regained their power to have a say on what happens in the country. Now, that is not something that is attained by a declaration. It's attained by actual, practical regaining of control of the country from those who control it. We have blacks governing Uganda, but not once has anybody assumed the leadership of Uganda since independence who has been raised by the people of Uganda. Everybody that has assumed leadership has done so using guns, the same as the British. Whoever has left office, Ugandans have never removed anybody from office. Whoever has left office has been removed by guns. So it is guns with power, or gunmen with power, gunmen and women with power. That is what must change.
Yeah.
So our struggle is not simply to say we have now won a multi-party system. The more fundamental struggle is to win popular power so that people have a right to determine how they are governed.
Dr. Kizza Besigye, you're quoted to have said that Museveni will never get out of leadership through a ballot, perhaps because of your previous experiences. And you said it will take more than just a ballot. It will take mobilization of Ugandans. And yet we see the party that you really fought for, the Front for Democratic Change Party, has continued to participate in election, including the most recent one. Now, these are two different statements. So how are you then going to see a change in leadership, not military, like you're saying, because you're saying we need to get out of that, and yet you also don't believe in the democratic structures of elections in this country?
Well, first of all, that's why I stepped down from leading FDC. I was the leader of FDC until 2012. Not that my term of office expired, but I stepped down. And in stepping down, I informed my party colleagues that the appreciation, the understanding I had come to was that we would never achieve change. This was after the 2011 elections, that we would not achieve the change we desired simply by going to the elections. And that what was needed was a fight. And that for the fight to succeed, we must unite all who are affected by the stranglehold of the junta, or the captives of the junta by whatever formation they describe themselves by. We must all unite first and foremost to regain control over the country. So in 2012, when I stepped down to further that objective of unity, to fight for liberation, not for election, but for liberation, to liberate the power of us, the captives in Uganda, from those who hold us in captivity, the armed rulers of our country. And that is the struggle that is underway now. So you can say, if you may, that there are two fronts.
Yeah.
There is a front that seeks to influence the change through elections.
Democratic processes.
The processes are not democratic, but nonetheless, in the undemocratic electoral processes, there can be something to be achieved through there, because there is a rare opportunity when an election is called where you can, to some extent, succeed in talking to the population. At other times, it's almost impossible to talk to the population directly.
And the other line of thought is violence.
So no, violence, by the way, is legitimate. That's what brought Museveni to power. I believe Museveni cannot oppose violence as a means to get to power.
And you were a part of that.
Yes, absolutely. This is why I'm saying that one should not intimidate Ugandans that violence stopped with him.
But you're campaigning against violence.
Absolutely. So our campaign against violence is not because we don't know that violence is there and that it can be a legitimate way.
So what means are you looking at?
The reason we have not embraced the use of violence is because we have the experience of having seen what the results of violence are. That the results of violence is more violence.
So then the struggle, Dr. Kizza Besigye, comes through what?
So the struggle we are undertaking, the fight we are undertaking, is a fight between the non-violent against the violent. The armed fought by the unarmed. And it's not a novel struggle. It's not invented here. All countries that have become stable, democratic, and have socio-economic justice have gone through the kind of struggle that we are undertaking, where the unarmed defeat the armed in their country.
By going on the streets and demonstrating, by how?
Well,
so what are you pushing for, Dr. Kizza Besigye?
Being a very acclaimed member of the Fourth Estate, a journalist, I am sure you know that we have done it before in Uganda. How did we defeat the British? Did the British say we have really ruled enough? We no longer need to control Uganda, we are going away? No, absolutely not. A struggle by the people of Uganda led the British to appreciate that they can no longer hold Ugandans in captivity. And not just Uganda, Africa. Africa did not become free of foreign domination by simply speaking nicely to them. No.
Dr. Kizza Besigye, the Africans took on rebellions. Yes. They rebelled and they put up a rebellion and fought for their independence. So is this what you're saying, that Ugandans need to fight?
Yes, and in the case of Uganda, there was no armed struggle. None. So some countries had armed struggle. Some did not have armed struggle. And still, the British were defeated. So both armed and unarmed win. That is the point that I think our own changes here have demonstrated. We have won without using guns. We have won using guns. What the difference between the two is that, first of all, the first victory was against foreigners. Unfortunately for us, the locals then maintained the stronghold of the foreigners. And what is clear now is that for unlocking the stronghold by those who pass as Ugandans, we don't need to use the armed struggle force.
I find that a bit unfair, Dr. Kizza Besigye. You're up against killing people, which is justified. But you're also saying that the population needs to go into rebellion, yes, against the state, absolutely, whose job is actually to keep law and order. Yes. You are leading a struggle of Ugandans to go on the streets and demonstrate and rebel
using legitimate non-violent means. Yes, we know that we are up against a criminal state, a rogue state. That's what we are up against.
When you say non-violent means, what do you mean?
You see, if tomorrow, for example, all of us Ugandans were unanimously of the view that we shall no longer bring food to the town, for example, what happens? Have you ever considered what happens? What becomes of the soldiers with their guns and their tear gas and so on? They will find they are powerless. We have not shot any gun, we have not thrown any stone, we have not marched on any street, but we can disarm those who are armed without any violence. You see, those who exercise power do so because they are obeyed, because you accept their exercise of power on you. If we say we no longer recognize you, we shall not obey you, we shall not listen to you, you are gone.
Dr. Kizza Besigye, this is one of the missions that you had when you and your team came up with the Forum for Democratic Change Party. You advanced this, the party grew, it got the hearts of Ugandans. One Uganda, one people was the voice that was reverberating on the streets of this country. The party grew, and then you left. I think that is in 2012, like you said. You said, you know what, the party has to go on, I am going to leave. Many people saw it as an example for a democratic transition of power within the party itself. When you left, conversations of, disuniting the party at Najanankumbi, at Katonga started. We had dissenting voices within the Forum for Democratic Change Party, some of them condemning you for being selfish and for having individual interests rather than the party interests to grow. And as we go ahead, we saw different people leaving, top people within the party, Mugisha Muntu, Alisa Lasso, and all these other top people who were grounded within the party and having the party at heart left. Forum for Democratic Change, by all means, has continued to lose its might when you are the epitome of that leadership. Since you left the Forum for Democratic Change Party, and are you still proud of the Forum for Democratic Change Party that you started?
You see, I am not happy, but I understand very, very well why what I see is there. And that is what I think, people who are in this country that sometimes you journalists invite to interrogate about what is going on in the country, analysts, whom you call analysts, that's exactly what they should help the country understand. You see, political parties are democratic institutions, inherently democratic institutions. Democratic institutions cannot survive and thrive in an undemocratic dispensation. They need a democratic dispensation to thrive. It's like fish. Fish survives only in water. You take it out of water, it dies. So political parties which are not in a democratic environment will die. That is a matter of course. The whole of this intended democratic institution is surrounded 24/7 by an undemocratic environment, an undemocratic dispensation. So I'm surprised that you say that, it goes inside the party. Of course, it doesn't only affect the outside of the party, it affects the inside. Because, for example, political parties are supposed to be supported by members, funded by members, supported by members, have, very vibrant discussions amongst members. Once all those processes are curtailed, then inside, it's like if you have, you know, maybe an arm is maybe easy to demonstrate. You have an arm here, which has a lot of things it can do. But if you systematically tie off the blood vessels that go into the arm will become limp and will die actually from inside. Because what feeds that organ has been cut off. So it dies from inside to outside. The same with political parties. This is why I'm saying that as long as you don't have a democratic dispensation where people have power and rights, can associate freely, can talk freely amongst themselves, can decide freely and fairly, political parties will not survive. And in fact, you see what has happened to all these political parties. See what happened to UPC. It started internally, indeed. Contestation, UPC, there is a court ruling on UPC that Akena was not rightly elected. There is a court ruling which has never been challenged. But Akena is in charge of UPC, guarded by the soldiers. No doubt you now have a Mao, you know, and that controversy started in Mbale, the Mbale Delegates Conference, where the internal chaos began and lack of democratic processes began.
But that's what befell of Forum for Democratic Change.
Absolutely. So what I am talking about, I have not said that only some parties will die. All parties will die if they are taken out of water.
Dr. Kizza Besigye, you are blamed for dividing the Forum for Democratic Change Party.
The same way. So, who, for example, was I at Makerere, where the old students of Makerere were trying to elect their leaders? These are old students. I'm one of them. I didn't register. I didn't go there because of what I know. But you saw the military in the middle of an election of all the students of Makerere. So it's not just political parties. It is all state and non-state institutions. They are captured by the junta. And this is why we talk about a liberation struggle.
But Dr. Kizza Besigye, aren't you really taking it to the extreme, everything blaming it to the junta? Let's get internally within the Forum for Democratic Change Party. When you saw the party falling apart, with the divisions within the party, your job as one of the elders of the party was to unite the party and grow the party stronger, even internally, before perhaps we can get into the outside.
Well, by the way,
did you do your job as an elder of the party to unite the party back?
Well, by the way, I don't buy your assertion that the Forum for Democratic Change is not strong. It is still a strong party.
Is it what it used to be?
It is a strong party. I've just told you what it faces, and which, if what it faces does not change, will mean that it will die. What it faces, the lack of water, oxygen that political organizations depend on. Once that is not there, any political organization will die. I must credit FDC to have fought extremely hard to survive in spite of the hostile environment in which we live. So the point here is, it does not matter whether the elders are there, whether they are not there. I've told you I was not part of what was in DP. I was not part of what was in UPC. I was not part of what has been in other formations that came up, whether it's CP, whether it's what, as long as we don't focus on where it comes from. Even before all of us, before I was even active in politics, what happened in the 60s? DP of the 1960s, the entire leadership of DP was taken over by UPC, the ruling party. Where were we? So this has nothing to do with the individual actors. It has something to do with the dynamics of power in the country. As I have pointed out, as long as you have a capture of a country, all power belonging to those with guns, or the few with guns, in our case, the family of Mr. Museveni, the family rule, what we are experiencing is what will be experienced anywhere in the world, not just here. It is what was being experienced even under British rule. So this has nothing to do with the personalities, that this is Museveni here, this is Besigye here. No. Any situation where you have state capture by force, the citizens and the organizations of citizens will suffer in the same way we are suffering.
Dr. Besigye, speak with you. Dr. Kizza Besigye, let's talk about the unity that you talked about earlier. That your zeal is to, bring the opposition together. The opposition seems to be disunited at such a point as this. We had efforts to unite the opposition, to put up a formidable front, at least through the electoral processes. But we saw all that coming down. You tried with different alliances, gone. You tried with TD, the Democratic Alliance, it also failed. And that, to some of us, is selfishness of people thinking that it's individuality rather than national interests, rather than uniting together. In growing democracies like in Kenya, we saw it worked when people came together and united. Maybe our politics is different, but unity within the opposition, we don't see it. And we feel that it's your responsibility as elders within the opposition to actually organize the opposition strongly in this country.
Yeah, so first of all, as I pointed out to you, Solomon, the absence of an environment that allows political parties to function does not stop at just not allowing them to function. The junta will do everything to survive, and this is what we are engaged in is called the struggle. It's not that, you will unite easily and march and remove the problem. I have told you that the British, who were far better identified because they were white, we were black, who were maybe fewer in numbers, they ruled us for 70 years. And that is because they have tools that can make what will get them defeated not easily achieved. And what are these tools? The first one is the fear they create in the minds of people. So you find you are organizing a terrified society, fearing that maybe if they are seen to act against those with power, they will be killed, they will be tortured, and that's why the junta finds it convenient to show how dangerous they are. They torture people and then show them to their country. See Kakwenza, look what Kakwenza's back. If you play with us, this is how you will look. They show the dead, the what, and that's why Mr. Museveni is always putting on his uniform and a gun, saying we shall kill you. So they intimidate people's minds. But secondly,
what does that have to do with uniting the opposition?
Everything to do with it, as I'm going to demonstrate. Secondly, they control all wealth for the country. So they determine who has and who doesn't have. They determine who lives well, who lives badly. Because they control all means, literally, of livelihood. And that's why they are arrogantly saying, we are bringing money to the parishes. You know, we are the ones who determine you are getting better. Wealth creation, we are the ones who give wealth creation, and so on. So they control livelihood. They control businesses. If we want to win a business, they are the ones to determine. You've been seeing the debate on who controls the building of hospitals and so on and so forth. So they control means of livelihood. These are tools they can apply to us, those of us who are in opposition. If you play by what I say, I will give you something to eat. And that's why, even as we talk, there is a lot of debate on those who may or may not have been compromised by those who control power. You've been hearing General Saleh, I will not help you. You know, if you don't apologize.
I will withdraw my political support. Speaking to an opposition.
Yes, precisely. If you don't...
I will withdraw my political support. So
if you don't support, if you don't do what I say, you know, I will kill you politically. I have the power to do so. The purpose for this is, first of all, that indeed they have the right to give money, and that money can translate into political power. So they determine which candidate will succeed, which one will fail. And therefore, even as we are in parties, I told you there are many people motivated by their personal success. So those who are motivated by their personal success, and there is somebody saying, if you don't unite, I will give you something. They will not unite and get something. So there are factors that undermine unity of leaders. But there are those who have nothing to benefit individually, the population. And the population is ever united. That's something most of the people in the media miss. That even as we may be divided as leaders, the population is united, even in elections. That's why in elections, you have only people. You have people whom the population sees as giving them possibly the best chance of change. The population, regardless of their parties, unites behind that person. I've been a candidate myself. Not everybody who voted for me was FDC. Not at all. They think that you represent what can cause change. They are united behind you. So yes, the leaders quite often will show elements of disunity, but that is not determinant. So we have not failed to cause change because of the disunity of leaders. We have failed to cause change because we have not yet organized the population enough to do what needs to be done to regain their power. And that's why the struggle is about popular empowerment. How do we empower the population to reclaim their power? The contestation now is not about leadership, that we remove Museveni Besigye leaders. That's not the contestation. The contestation is about the power dynamics. Who controls power? Is it the population, or is it the armed people, a few people, a cabal of people that control power?
Interesting views, Dr. Kizza Besigye. There's this conversation around generational leadership. I mean, within the political parties. Certainly, Uganda's electorate is a young population. There are conversations within the National Resistance Movement Party talking about it's your time is done. There's a new force. Young people are taking over. You know, in NUP, young people are taking over. In FDZ, there's a zeal of young people taking over. Isn't this generational leadership thing catching up with political parties, even for the Front for Democratic Change? And as one of the elders of the party, have you taken responsibility to grow the young people within the Forum for Democratic Change to take over from your space. Clearly, you have done your job, you have contributed, but have you mentored the young people are taking over as your team phases out?
Well, you see, Solomon, first of all, Uganda is a country dominated by children, not even just young people, but children. Half our population is below 15 years. 22 million Ugandans are below 15 years. So those who are below the majority age, those who don't vote, they are about 65% of the population. The people who are minority age. So Uganda is inherently a country where the predominance of the young is a must. It's not a debate. It's a country of the young. What, however, needs to be understood that the struggle at hand, the task at hand, is not that of generations who is living and who is coming. The struggle at hand is powerlessness. Whether you are young, whether you are old, you are powerless. That is the crux of the matter.
I hear you.
And regardless of who holds the mantle, as long as the population, and as I have said, the greatest majority of the population are the young, as long as the population has no power, the end result remains the same. So when Museveni actually took over power, he was a young man of 40. He was 42, I think, when he took over. He did not do a good job, not because he was old, but because of the power dynamics, because he superintended over a country of powerless people, and therefore could use the power he had acquired in whatever way he wanted. And how he has used it is indeed harmful for the young and the old. Therefore, it is diversionary when we are fighting for liberation to introduce generations. And it is being very carefully choreographed as a generational struggle, as a succession of generations. That's how those who control the country by force are actually manipulating the generation to say, no, there is a generational leader, Muhoozi.
No, I think that it's naive for us to think that it is not important for us to talk about the generational aspect of our political spaces, especially within the political party. Dr. Kizza Besigye, you have done your job as the leader of Forum for Democratic Change. You gave way for other people. Certainly, it is the role of the people in the political parties to grow young people in the political space, because tomorrow you will not be there.
The people who took over after me, were they older or younger than me?
Well, but I mean, they were younger than...
Are they in the pattern were groomed? Yes, they were groomed. But the whole question is the one we discussed earlier. What is the fate of the political parties you are talking about? Can they function democratically within or outside?
So should you just do away with political parties?
No. The question is what is primary, what is secondary. So the first struggle, the primary struggle now is the struggle for freedom, the struggle for justice. Once that has been settled and power is democratized, then even what you are trying to raise becomes a settled matter, because once the majority of the people who are young have power, they will exercise it. They will definitely exercise it. The only reason that the people who have power now are the old people is because they have grown with that power, having captured it by force. It's not because the young are not capable of asserting their will. They are completely capable. They have no space to do so. So let's take first things first. The first thing is liberation. And I have told you that liberation requires maximum unity. So the moment you start saying, no, maybe for us we are young, for us, maybe these are women, these are men, maybe this is the, all that is important at some stage, but the first stage of liberation requires the concerted effort of everybody to shift power from few. So this is domination. What we are trying to sort out is domination, to end domination of a few, of many by a few. The many must harness maximum unity and assert their will against the few. That is the process at hand. But I entirely recognize and support the empowerment of the young.
Even
and
within political parties.
Everywhere. That's why, if you've been listening to what we are saying,
Yeah.
the more disastrous alienation of the young is alienation from knowledge. That is the more disastrous, and people are not focusing on that. Because the young, to be assertive and to be effective, to be powerful, to develop and to be wealthy, they need knowledge. How have we asserted the will of the people to acquire knowledge? You know, young people, Ugandans, young Ugandans, today, we are providing 3,000 shillings a term for their education. 3,000 shillings a term. Those who dominate the country, they published the fees structure about a week ago, where they say for their young people, they should spend about 960,000 per term, while the state, the captive state, is providing 3,000 for your children. Those are the more critical situations that disempower young people. That's how they end up on the plains going to become slaves in countries abroad. Now, for that to end, it will not end by recognizing that there is that problem. We must regain control over the country.
I hear you. And I am this guy who believes that regaining that country can come through political processes and also empowering the public, like you're saying.
Well, show me how your belief will function. So, which country, because as a journalist, obviously, you are very enlightened, which country have those political processes taken over juntas?
Let's look at Nairobi in Kenya itself.
Well,
you had a person who was alienated out of Ruto himself.
No.
All the state enterprises and maybe the Kenyan bit is so far
No, it's not far. It's actually relevant. How was the junta under Moi defeated before Kenyans would have a new constitution, a new dispensation? They fought. Many people died. You know, that time, of course, the president now was on the Moi. But the people who were on the opposite, who were fighting for freedom, and those who were fighting for freedom, many died. Many were spent many years in prison, you know. So it's not, struggle there continues. They haven't consolidated yet. They are still in transition. They haven't consolidated themselves. But those struggles must be fought. Because don't forget, Kenya was a one-party state.
Yeah.
How did they win? Did they win by going through an election and, saying we have now won
They
this?
went through systems. They
No,
had to revamp their
no,
constitution.
no, no, no,
They
no.
went through
Absolutely not. It took a lot of struggle on the streets. Many people were mowed down by gunmen and so on, like we are going through.
Dr. Kizza Besigye, thank you. I wanted to conclude this interview by looking at. Sorry, I keep going back to the Forum for Democratic Change because this is your baby, and I think its ability to live beyond the challenges that it's facing right now is your concern. Just looking at the previous elections, we saw that majority of members of parliament in the opposition are now coming from the National Unity Platform Party, which is just barely 2-3 years old, and the MPs from the Forum for Democratic Change Party, for the first time, FDC lost its position in parliament as the leader of opposition right now, and that must feel bad for a person who believes in his baby, which is the Forum for Democratic Change Party.
Absolutely not.
What are you doing to reawaken the giant in the Forum for Democratic Change
No, I
Party?
don't feel bad. You see, again, you must really internalize, and I pray that you do, that you carry out a process of internalization of the dynamics that I have been endeavoring to describe, that the people of Uganda understand that the task at hand is not contestation of political platforms. The people of Uganda understand that. The people of Uganda understand that the task at hand is ending domination. And so even when they go to elections, I have pointed out to you that even when I was contesting, the people that voted for us in FDC were not just FDCs. They were DPs, they were UPCs, they were people who have never had any parties and are not interested even in the parties. But they would be voting consciously because they think that what you call a wave, that an onslaught they see as potent to cause that change, should be embraced and hopefully cause that change. And once there is freedom, once people can enjoy their full range of rights and there is justice, then the contestation of ideas on how to make the country prosper and so on would start in earnest. And that's why we have been talking about a transition. Regardless of how or who leads a process that ends the capture of our country by force, if we want to have a democratic dispensation, we will have to pass through a transitional process. And you were citing Kenya previously, it did. It passed through a transitional process in which actually they created a government of national unity to manage the transition, to make a constitution, to build new institutions of the state that can engender a democratic dispensation. So that is why it is actually diversionary, very diversionary, to talk about FDC, NUP as just rivaling for seats in parliament. That is not the task at hand. The task at hand, regardless of who has what number of seats, the task at hand is how do we together regain control over the country. Because let me point out to you, Solomon, that the parliament you are talking about has absolutely no power. It is just a facade. It's what is typically called a rubber stamp that is held by those who have power and who will stamp whatever they want to stamp. That is the parliament you are talking about. So it's not a measure of anything. Just like the judiciary is another rubber stamp. It has no power. These two critical institutions of a normally functioning state did not become powerless by choice. They were attacked and emasculated. You remember the courts of law, how they were attacked by the military. Blood was flowing in the High Court in broad daylight. And the courts cowed. Parliament was attacked. You must have covered the parliament under attack. You must have seen a letter of the Speaker of Parliament lamenting who attacked us, addressing Mr. Museveni, the chief captor of the country. Who are these people who attacked us? I am the Speaker. I didn't invite anybody. Has anyone ever been produced in court for entering Parliament illegally? Absolutely not. So the Parliament is a powerless, almost useless thing that is simply used in the power games by those who control the state. So it is erroneous to start using it as a yardstick for anything.
Wow, interesting. Dr. Kizza Besigye, we just one last one. The political space is shaping up ahead of 2026. What's your plan?
To make sure that by 2026, Uganda has a free society, that possibly we have rebuilt state institutions from being Museveni institutions to being Uganda's institutions, that we can have a truly bank of Uganda, not a Museveni bank that right now has spent even a year without a governor because the true governor is there in Entebbe. That we have courts that are truly empowered by the population and that can exercise justice for all without fear or favor, that we have a parliament that is the principal organ of the state, that is the supreme organ of the state, because the parliament is supposed to be the embodiment of the people of Uganda, and therefore supreme, since all power belongs to the people, which, as I have told you, is not. And therefore, I am looking at the period between now and 2026 as a period where we should end domination, end captivity by those who hold guns. And therefore, my rallying call is for all Ugandans to unite and we fight for our power, to regain our power and influence in the country, and to organize a transition that will take us to that area where we can have free and fair elections. We shall never have free and fair elections except going through a mechanism of transition where people have regained power, where the empowered population make their constitution, which becomes a democratic constitution, where institutions that are provided for under such a constitution are built under conditions of freedom and justice, and then using, even where we reconcile the country. We have a country today where there is a lot of hatred because of exclusion. People who feel excluded are angry. So people who have been terrorized and killed are angry. People whose rights are being wantonly violated are angry. We must heal that anger. We must heal the country through a process of truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation. And then we can have free and fair elections, hopefully in 2026.
Will you be on the ballot?
In 2020, after the transition, I don't expect to be.
Wow. Dr. Kizza Besigye, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Great pleasure always.
Well, I've been speaking to Dr. Kizza Besigye, opposition strongman, and also one of the founders of Front for Democratic Change. I'm Solomon Serwanjja, and this is The Hard Questions.